What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Culture FC, the weekly soccer show that's not really about soccer. We cover all the culturally relevant aspects of the game, but none of the results happening on the pitch. My name is Louie.
I'm Alan.
I'm Brendan.
Let's get right into it. This week's episode, we talked about money in modern football. Is it ruining the sport? We delved into the aspects that where money is becoming a more increasingly important aspect of the game, and we talked about whether or not we think it's ruining the sport. We talked about scheduling, fans not being really considered, rising ticket prices, basically ads everywhere, how clubs have sponsorships and partners for everything, and sketchy money takeovers, and finally talked a little bit about transfers. As always, if you like our show, please give us that 5-star review. Don't forget to share us on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere that you have your podcast that you're able to share. Let's jump into this week's show.
What's up, guys? Welcome back. I'm here with the always handsome Louie and Brendan.
What's up, man?
Just hanging out, man. Enjoying this lovely, chilly morning.
Really cold getting into the office this morning.
A little brisk.
Yeah.
But the warm weather is on its way.
Yeah,
I hope so.
Definitely looking up. Can't really complain. Spring seems to be. What is it? The groundhog? Did it see its shadow?
I don't know.
Did that already pass?
That's a good question. Well, either way, I hope that winter does not last 6 more weeks.
Yeah. Let's get into the.
Yeah, so I have the wonderful 5 little tidbits of info for the week. First off, our new USSF president, Carlos Cordeiro, is been elected, and he takes charge immediately. And with that immediate presidency, he has a couple things to do, including the United States-Mexico bid for the World Cup in 2026.
Don't forget Canada.
Yeah, United States, Mexico, Canada. Sorry, our brothers to the north. We love you guys. I actually love Canada too. I have a Canadian next to me. So he's got to do that in a month, and then he has to hire a new U.S. men's national team coach, among other technical directors. And lastly, the USSF is a defendant in a number of lawsuits.
Yeah.
So he's got a heavy plate.
I didn't actually know that the bid was due next month. That's actually a pretty big thing, I feel like. Also, funnily, he was one of the least mentioned people in the podcast.
I think he was like, he's a Goldman Sachs banker and he's the vice president. We don't care.
Think people even the news after was like, this guy didn't. No one even thought he had a chance.
Yeah, he was like the safe pick.
Stick to what you know.
Yep.
USSF.
Stick to your guns. Second thing, the new Champions League final ball was announced. I believe, I forget where it is again. I already forgot where it is.
Kiev.
Either way, it's in Kiev. Yeah, Kiev. But do you guys?
Does anybody think it's boring?
Yeah, I think it's a little boring. Do you guys know the whole background behind the 8-star thing?
No,
so
I have no idea.
It was originally 8 stars for like the 8 teams that met up and started to play, and it's a 22-year-old design.
Yeah.
And the guy who designed it, I believe, was from London.
It looks like, if anyone's ever used Adobe Illustrator, if you just use the burst tool in 2018 CC and then just threw that on as a backdrop.
But it's supposed to reflect the city of Kiev and the lights.
My whole thing about the Champions League ball is that, like, I like it. I like the fact that the Champions League final has its own distinct design. But at the end of the day, it's pretty much been the same exact design.
Yeah, scrolling through, it definitely
every single year. Which isn't really I don't know how I feel about it, because it's not necessarily a bad thing, because it's like brand recognition. When you see that ball, you know it's the Champions League final. But at the same time, it's also like, it's kind of been the same.
Yeah, it's not that hard. I feel like any of us could just design something for this, because it's just throw a
clipping mask behind those stars and just make it look cool.
I will say the one at the London ball was slightly different. I mean, it looks the same, but there were certain different things about it. The Wembley final in 2013. But, you know what I mean? I can't, aside from it just being very similar, it is a very nice looking ball. So, cool.
Yeah, let's see how it goes. But on to the next one. So Las Vegas Lights FC and Nashville FC have sold out their 2 first preseason games.
Wait, so my question is, you're saying the Nashville SC that's playing in the MLS or the. I think they also have like a.
They have the
SC.
SC.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. SC. It's the same kind of tier as the Las Vegas Lights.
Gotcha.
FC.
So it'd be like the second/third
exactly.
division. Cool.
So kind of cool. They both sold out their first preseason games.
Yeah.
So
we predicted that Nashville would have good turnout. Which is cool.
I saw this weekend. So Nashville played the MLS Nashville team played its first game against Atlanta this past weekend.
Cool.
And they did really well. They had sold out the whole game.
Yeah.
And they just had to move their season opener to the Tennessee Titans Stadium because of the demand for the opening game for
Sell
Nashville.
it out.
Let's make soccer
going to
cool
be
again.
playing at a much smaller ground,
Yeah.
and then the amount of people in Nashville who want to go be at the home opener, they had to move it to Nissan Stadium, which is, if you don't know, a football stadium.
Yeah,
it's very big.
That's dope. I hope that sells out.
And then point number 4, back to the Las Vegas Lights FC. Did you guys see their new jerseys?
Yes.
Did see their new jerseys.
With where you pull it up and there's a little emoji smiley face on the inside.
So they're sponsored by Zappos.
Yep.
First of all, their jersey is pretty controversial in terms of if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you really hate it. I'm on the boat that I don't like it at all. It looks like second division indoor league jersey. The quality of it just doesn't look great. I understand the concept and where they were going with it, but it just doesn't look that awesome. I really thought that they were going to do a better job based off of what they've done for branding and marketing the actual team. The jersey really failed to impress.
I get where they were going with it, the gradients and it looks like a neon light, but at the same time I see where they were going for it, but it just ends up making their jersey look tacky.
Yeah, it looks like a paintball jersey kind of.
It
looks like something you would never associate with soccer.
I've never been fond
football.
of clubs putting their crest directly in the center of their shirt because it just doesn't flow well enough. But I like where they were going. I like the idea behind all of it. And I actually think it's really cool that if you flip the shirt inside out, there's a smiley face. So clearly they're doing that so that when the players score, they celebrate, put it over their head, and all of a sudden,
card.
But then it becomes like a viral sensation. You know what I mean?
True.
All of a sudden, people are tweeting about it and talking about it. So I think that the idea was there, execution was low.
I will say this. Taking your shirt off in lower league football or soccer should not be a card. There's no reason that should be a card in anything that isn't
I agree.
the top tier of soccer across the world.
And then finally, number 5, AC Milan and Puma announce a long-term partnership with the coolest way to do it, a famous Italian rapper, Ernia, and he just kind of just kills it, and they all just have AC Milan gear and stuff, and it's gonna be a new era among the likes of Arsenal and
Dortmund.
Yeah, they have some other teams.
There's quite a few of the Premier League
ones.
teams that have Puma now. I remember a few years back looking down at the breakdown.
Leicester?
Yeah,
Leicester's Puma.
I remember there was I saw a graphic a couple years ago of the breakdown of clubs and what brands they were rocking, and it was basically 98% Adidas or Nike. And then I saw one for this season, and there's actually a very big difference. There's not many teams wearing Adidas,
and then Adidas, Puma and Adidas, they were brothers, right? That's
the founders were brothers,
and then they split and they started their respective things. Yeah. So that's kind of must be the family just there must be just I know they're both passed, but crazy.
Yeah.
I'm all into this whole use a rapper or use a music artist to release new things with your club. I think it's so cool. It's been used a lot, but not too much where it's getting old, I feel like. And it's also cool that Milan stuck to their roots, didn't throw in some English American rapper. Threw in there an Italian rapper who's doing it, keeping it culturally significant.
My thing is, do you think it'll ever get old?
Nah, I don't know. It just depends. I feel like it could get old if every single team were doing it.
Saturated.
As they started using more mainstream artists and stuff like that. But at the same time, I'm a big hip hop artist, so I don't necessarily think so.
You're a big hip hop artist?
I'm a big hip hop fan.
Apparently, Alan, guys, has a night job where he's
I just
in
rap.
the streets.
Raps on the side.
Find me out there.
Doing rap battles in the mean streets of suburban Boston.
Yeah. All right. I'm done with this.
The reason I asked is just because I think that hip hop is culture right now. It's the mainstay culture. So I think that clubs will always be tapping into culture, and it's great to see.
I just think that if everyone is starting to use an announcement with with a rap thing, it could just be like, all right, who's next and who's doing it. I don't know, but I mean, I like it, but I feel like it could get old quick.
Yeah,
I don't know, but just my opinion.
All right, guys, so let's dive into this week's topic. And this week's topic is modern money in soccer. Is it ruining the sport? Is kind of the overall topic we're going to be talking about. So first, we kind of want to dive into the different aspects where the money is clearly being used and overused, depending on your opinion, in certain aspects of the game. The first one I want to talk about is game scheduling. This has kind of become an issue recently with the Premier League because you have the Premier League scheduling games around time slots where people in the East, so in other words, Chinese viewers, Japanese viewers, people in that area of the world will then be able to watch the games, which on the surface level sounds great. Yeah, more people watching games. But what it's doing to local supporters is actually pretty bad. So they've been doing a lot of really early time kickoffs in England lately. So I was watching a little video about a supporter, a guy who travels to support his club, and basically he says that he has to wake up at an ungodly hour to try and get there for it's like a noon kickoff for them. But let's say you're traveling down the country, you're getting up at 2 a.m, riding a bus down just to, be at the stadium for a noon kickoff, and you're basically losing the whole day. So they actually saw a decrease in away fan support for those games that they scheduled at that time.
Yeah. And for American fans or American sports, might not realize it, but traveling and away fans is a very big part of world soccer. It's huge. I mean, having an away fan base there that sometimes can even drown out the home fans is a very important aspect, can make an away game that much easier and that much more manageable for a team. So not being able or having a decreased number of people being able to go out to games is actually really bad. And I understand that you're trying to make with the globalization of it, trying to make it so that everyone can kind of see it, but if you're losing the atmosphere of matches and kind of that rivalry between fans and games, I mean, for them it's poor. I mean, obviously for us we like it because we get to watch the games, but for if it were happening here locally, I would be fuming.
Oh, yeah. I'd be so upset if one of my favorite teams was just like, hey, I know you've been a fan for a while, but we now kind of schedule our games just a little bit differently. You're now going to have to leave way earlier, and you're going to be exhausted by the time you get to the game. Your day's ruined. And you're going to be pissed, even more pissed, driving home 8 hours if your team loses.
Yeah.
And so I guess it brings up the question, and it's like, what is football? What is soccer for? Is it for the local fans? Is it for global fans? What's your take?
All right. So my view on this is I understand the globalization of the sport, but you have to consider that these teams are most important where they were rooted and where they are and where they actually have a physical contribution to the community and to society around them. So you have to put those people in focus first. So Manchester United, for example, has been growing for years on end, Barcelona, Real Madrid on their time schedules. And just recently, they have started, the television networks have started moving around schedules because they want to get the entire world. But people were still watching in and tuning into those games regardless. If someone in China or someone here has to wake up at 4 a.m. to watch a game, that is much easier than having to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to take a train, to take a car down at 3-hour drive somewhere to go watch a game. So you have to put into consideration the difficulty it is for people around the world to be able to watch these games. And in the end, if all TVs were to blow up, whatever, and you can't watch TV, those fans that are there locally are what going to support your club through the long run. So you really need to consider them and put them as the forefront of it. And if I have to wake up, and if I really love Manchester United and I have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to watch a game, I'm going to do it. So I think that there is some leeway, but you can't really start hurting the people that are most directly impacted by it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree because like you said, it's way easier to hop on a TV or hop on a live stream than it is to travel. And I think even before TVs and game schedules were around, like, you had your home base fans, and they were going everywhere. So I think at the very root of it all, you really need to have the physical fans. So I think it's meant to be for the people who were there when it started and the people who show up and show support at the stadium.
Plus, you have to consider for the club and for the people that are there on the pitch playing the matches, me watching on TV doesn't affect them whatsoever.
No. Their actual game. Yeah.
Right. It doesn't. I can be be yelling at my TV, but those guys cannot hear me. So the people that are actually in the stadium cheering their players or booing the other team, whatever it may be, they're having the most direct impact to the success of the club. So they have to TV broadcasters have to realize that it could be cool, but if the stadium is dead, it makes the game less boring to watch as well.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, I understand we're broadcasting. They're obviously trying to put money in front of it.
And but that's the thing. They already have – the Premier League already gets so much money from their TV deal.
True.
And so now what they're trying to do is reposition it to get even more money.
Yeah.
And, good in a way, but if it ends up alienating the fans of the league that is in your country, like, don't forget, this is the English-British Premier League. You have to cater to the people in your country. Mm-hmm. It's you got to realize that, yes, the game is global, and yes, there are, with globalization, there are fans everywhere in the world, but at the end of the day, the club is still located somewhere in a physical location, and the fans are most likely from that area, if not from around there. And so you have to really cater to the people, because at the end of the day, football is for the people. It's for, like we said several times, it's for the working class. It's for the everyday person to enjoy. And I'm not saying that, like, we all support English Premier League teams. We're clearly not from England, but, we shouldn't be number one priority.
Yeah.
No, I would hate to be
second priority. Yeah. Sure, they still make plenty of money off of us because with international streaming rights and stuff like that, great. But don't forget that the game still needs to exist in its home in England.
I will say this as a final point. I find it absolutely ridiculous that the TV broadcasters are the ones that dictate when games are played.
Yeah, that to me
so
makes
the
no
FA
sense.
of no league can determine when the games are played because whatever it may be, NBC Sports or
they have the rights, so
BBC or whoever it is that plays games in your local area, they're the ones that are calling the shots and saying, no, you're going to play a game at this time.
Yeah,
what do they know about
and even if it's not
and
100% control over the game times, even if they have 1% control over the game times, it makes no sense to me.
Right. It doesn't. I mean, they're so far. I mean, they're just trying to broadcast. They don't care about how the players are feeling or fans or blah blah blah. But yeah, I mean, moving on, kind of, but staying with that point that you said, Louis, of for the common fan, for the common person that's there watching the game, you also are seeing a huge increase in ticket prices across not only Europe but the world. Really, I mean, it's harder and harder for fans from local areas to actually afford a ticket to a game.
Yeah, I was. I mean, you see these protests on TV all the time. Arsenal have come under a lot of fire in recent years because of their rising season ticket prices, and it's just been absurd for them. They have, I think, one of the highest averages of tickets, like the highest priced ticket on average is Arsenal in England.
Yeah,
and you have to remember that. What these people see is that with the influx of all the money from the TV deals and all this globalization and all these global partners and everything, there's so much money coming into the sport that some people might think, wow, so they have all this money coming in. Do you think they might make the tickets a little bit cheaper to get more people into the stadium or to fill out the stadium a little bit more? But no, they're just like, you know what? Let's make as much money as possible and basically just take money from our fans. And I'm not saying that a club shouldn't make money, of course, but to what extent? Like, are you just like milking all your fans for the support?
And even I've seen on some, like, on Reddit and everything, like every year or every week there's a new protest, like, oh, like this week, like Liverpool's going to Porto or something, and then like the ticket prices for Liverpool away fans are like drastically different than the ones for Porto, and it's just like, where do they get off? It's like double the price. It's just like, I get that you have some kind of like pull because it's your stadium, but at the same time, Why?
Yeah, that recently happened to Manchester United for the next Champions League game with Sevilla. Sevilla skyrocketed prices for the United fans. So what Manchester United did was they subsidized the tickets, made sure that, and then in return they it's kind of petty, but they kind of raised the prices for Sevilla, right? So these clubs kind of try to gain with their fans and hurt the opposite fans in a way, but.
So I have a question. I think not actually really a question. It's just another point I want to bring up. But it seems that with rising ticket prices, it almost segregates your fans. To an extent, you have, especially around Arsenal and Manchester United comes under a lot of fire for this. They say that, especially recently too, Jose Mourinho came out and said that we don't have any support at the stadium because people are really quiet. And a lot of people on the internet, they say that Manchester United, the people who go to the stadium, just who are people who have the most money. They just fly to Manchester with the most money and they get to the stadium because it's so expensive to go. So in a way, what's happening is because of ticket prices, you're alienating a big portion of your fans. Right. And that ends up affecting the players. Clearly, Jose Mourinho said that there's no energy at Old Trafford. There's no vibe. And so that ends up hurting the team because they don't feel the support from the stadium. Imagine a 75,000 seat stadium and they're not really showing you much support. That you think you have one of the biggest stadiums in the world. You're gonna fill it up. You're gonna make a ton of noise. You're gonna make the other team scared. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, that's not happening. It's supposed
to be your fortress, and because United's away fans are actually known across England as being one of the best traveling supporters that exist. But the home fans. More and more, it's really just a few sections of the stadium now that are the singing sections that actually know the songs. I mean, you have someone like me that I claim to be a United fan, but I don't know all the chants because I'm not there chanting on my TV here. You know what I mean? So I don't know them. So if I go to a game, I might try, but I'm not there full lungs out, bursting out because I don't know the chants.
Because you're not sitting in the stadium learning it.
I'm not there day in and day out. And also going along with that is it's kind of ridiculous some of the structures that these teams have set up for season ticket holders, where if they miss one game, they lose the rest of their season tickets, and then they sell them again because they want people that are going to go there every single day, make sure that the value for the tickets are getting sold, which is I saw something circulating on the internet where this man was sick, was in the hospital, couldn't make it to the game. United took away his tickets, and then there was a petition to give him his season tickets back, didn't get him back. It's come on, you can't. Yeah, there has to be a little bit of leniency, man. That's ridiculous for fans that are there.
On the flip side, something that I've two different examples of people or clubs trying to make this better is Bradford City. They are currently, I want to say they're either League One or Championship. I'm not sure, but they a couple of years back they had a good run in the FA Cup. They ended up beating Chelsea, ended up making it to the quarters. And the following year, there was pressure from their board to raise their season ticket prices because they were becoming more of a hot commodity. People wanted to go watch them a little bit more. But what they did instead, so they have a 20-something thousand seat stadium, so close to Premier League level. So they're probably just shy of the capacity for Premier League stadium. And they were probably averaging something like 12,000 spectators a game. They had about 12,000 season ticket holders. So probably, not that much.
No.
A good amount, but they wanted more. So instead of raising the season ticket prices, they lowered it from £199 to £149 a year. So it ends up being £6 a game, which is, if you were to take in consideration, for us over here in America, it's probably $12, $13, something like that they're paying for a game.
Yeah.
And so that was really, really cool of them to do, just because think about it. And then you know what happened? They ended up selling season tickets over 18,000. Yeah. So sure, had they raised the price, they could have gotten maybe another 1,000 or 2,000 supporters for season ticket supporters. But then they lowered it and they did almost 1.5 times what they normally do, which is even better for them. That's more money for their pocket.
Yeah.
So in a weird way, I kind of hope that more clubs, not weird way, I do straight up hope that more clubs take it in that direction. You know what I mean? You have, by lowering your price, you're going to get more people in, but that's still more money than you were making before.
Yeah. I will say this, a lot of the culprits of skyrocketing prices are teams that are owned or partially owned by American owners.
Or foreign owners, not necessarily American.
People that aren't from there, but United, Arsenal, who is it, Liverpool. Liverpool's owned by the
Boston
guy,
Sports Group.
right?
Fenway Sports Group, sorry.
because they don't again, it's that removal from the culture. They don't understand what it means
to them. It's a business.
Skyrocket
It's
prices.
not
Right. They're run like American businesses. Raise the prices, people will come regardless. And
like we do in the U.S. stupidly for like Bruins.
It's so
and
funny.
Celtics
Side note:
and
it's
Red
funny
Sox.
talking to people who like aren't from around here, and we talk about how much, on average, if you go to a New England Patriots game, I've paid $180 a ticket to go sit up next to Jesus. Like me, Jesus, and my girlfriend were watching the Pats game, and it was, I spent close to $370 for 2 tickets, all the way up in the nosebleeds, literally up in the 300 level. And people pay that, not even batting an eye.
Yeah.
Oh,
and people talk about the Super Bowl prices like they have like pride in it. Oh my God, this year it's like $9,000 for a ticket. I'm like, yeah, you're a bunch of fucking lunatics for
really,
paying
the only
that.
people that can go to the Super Bowl are like corporate businesses that buy the tickets for their you know what I mean? Or you're just super rich. Like,
Or you're
why
a
is it
super fan
cool
and you're
that-
like mortgaged.
Why is it
took
cool
a
that
mortgage out of
every
your house.
final courtside tickets are $30,000? Like, that's not cool, man. That's
You don't
stupid.
have supporters. It just becomes an elitist kind of club
Yeah,
where it's like whoever has the most money comes in.
You just
So
see Hollywood lined up at basketball games, like, because they're the only ones that can fucking afford it. Like, that's not cool at all.
What else isn't cool? Ads.
sorry, wait. Before we hop over to the next topic, I do want to say there's one other very cool instance of a pretty big club doing something to help supporters out in terms of ticket prices. Swansea City, I don't know if they're still doing this, but a couple of years back, probably in like 2015, they were capping away tickets for fans at £22 pound.
Yeah.
So, that's been a big thing, is that they want the support of away fans. They want you to come. If you're Swansea and you're playing in Manchester, they want you to go from Wales up to Manchester to support, And so by capping it at £22 makes it easier for them to actually get from Wales all the way up to Manchester, because don't forget, you got to pay for either taking the train or you're taking a bus or whatever it is. You still have to pay to get there. So by capping it off, it makes the prospect of being a traveling supporter that much more enticing.
Yeah.
And so there's actually a big push in England to get a lot of clubs to adopt the £20. It was called like it was like 20 pounds is enough, or 20. It's like a pretty big campaign that they're doing. There's a lot of people behind it where they're trying to basically say everybody should cap away tickets at £20 to try and make football more atmospheric.
Right. Plus, you have to consider that these movements are kind of important because you're not usually going alone.
Right.
You're buying tickets for your family, your friends, your kids, whatever it may be. So that the diminishing prices actually help in getting whole families out there, kids that want to pass on the legacy of being an away supporter or being a supporter of a club. It's important that these prices go down because families can't afford to pay for their 3 kids every single game to, like, whatever it may be, a ridiculous price. But yeah.
And this isn't just an English problem. All of the different, last week's episode we talked about the presidential election for the United States Soccer Federation, but rising ticket prices in the MLS was actually a pretty big point that everybody kind of touched on at one point or another. We didn't really talk too much about it last week, but through my research, I saw that every single candidate was looking through, they spoke a little bit about ticket prices and how even here in the U.S. rising ticket prices, but for us, we don't bat an eye because, like we just said, we pay. Like,
we're used to it.
We're used to it. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of money I've spent on sports games.
Yeah.
And I mean, okay, it's different. We're in Boston. Our teams always usually sell out, or we always have like really good teams. So in a weird way, I kind of get it, but it's not like it should be a thing. Like, back to what you were saying about bringing kids to a game, one of the things that Bradford City did is if you were a season ticket holder and you had a kid under 11, you could bring him for free.
Yeah.
And so it's like...
And they sit on your lap.
No, they sit in an actual seat. Like, you get his own seat. It's free.
Oh, they get an actual ticket.
They get an actual ticket just because they're under 11.
That's
and
dope.
so that's kind of what it's supposed to be, right? You're supposed to bring your kid to games and have them be a fan with you from the early ages up, And so... yeah, I think those are some of the things that are going on in terms of ticket prices and fans and stuff like that.
Yeah, clubs have to realize, I mean...
without fans, clubs aren't clubs.
Yeah, right. 100%. I mean, and kind of transitioning to the segue that B tried bringing up earlier. You see these ads everywhere, right? Ads every corner of every stadium, even now almost every corner of every jersey you buy has an ad, right? Mm-hmm. So now they're implementing the sleeve jerseys, something that, has been happening.
Sleeve sponsor,
sleeve jersey. Something that's been happening in Latin American countries forever now because they can't afford anything, almost, it seems. sponsorships everywhere under the crest on the back where your last name's supposed to be underneath the numbers, inside the numbers. You know what I mean?
If you watch any South American league, it looks like NASCAR jerseys.
Yeah, it's
covered. They're just covered in sponsors. From every square inch of a South American football jersey is covered in either a sponsorship and barely has the name of the club.
Right.
It's absurd.
And we often talk about European leagues, or we're often talking about the Premier League because it's mostly what we watch. But if the life of a club outside of the Premier League or the Spanish league is very hard. It's not necessarily easy. I mean, consider most of the world's soccer leagues out there. Brazilian league teams are very poorly run, and they rely on ad money a lot to just maintain daily operations.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily have a problem with ads everywhere. I think what it affects for me is if I'm going to buy a jersey and it has all those ads, I don't necessarily love it. I think it takes away maybe from jersey sales if people don't like that aesthetic. But if it's keeping my club alive, sure. I can't really complain. I understand there's a lot of open space to sponsor something. And if you're making money off of it, I get it. You need to survive. But there's also a limit, right? So the teams in Brazil that I follow and my friends follow, they need those ads to survive. But Manchester United, Barcelona, they don't need to put an ad on their sleeve to be able to live daily, right? There's a threshold that I'm willing to accept.
So the whole sleeved logo sponsorship thing is brand new to the Premier League. This is the first year they've done it, and what happens is they actually also made the area on the front of the shirt where you can put a sponsor even bigger. But UEFA doesn't allow that big size. So some clubs were contemplating making it bigger, but then they were like, well, we don't want to have two different style jerseys where the logo is two different sizes from, when if you go play Champions League versus playing the Premier League, they just want to have it be one size because it's easier. But I think your point on whether or not I want to buy a jersey based on it is super valid. If Manchester United, they actually didn't put a sleeve sponsor this year, and I'm thankful for it because I actually bought an Alexis Sanchez jersey the other day. So once it gets here, I'm super excited. But if it had the sleeve logo, I would either ask them not to have it, and I'd put the two patches of the two Premier League patches, or I would just do nothing because I don't like the aesthetic. I have several Brazilian soccer jerseys, but the ones I have are very minimal.
The older
logos.
Ones, yeah.
They're a little bit older. I have some old antiques that I got from family, which is really awesome. But even some of the newer ones, they have like pretty big sponsors. But you should see some of these these kits. If you ever watch the Libertadores, which is the South American equivalent of the Champions League, it literally looks like a NASCAR race. It's just a bunch of teams with a bunch of logos everywhere. But the other part is we should break this down into not only club like kit sponsorship and ads, but also if you look at certain clubs, like when they're playing and the game is live, they have like the 2 rows of the advertising. How to call it, like a stand that kind of runs on the outside of the
barrier. I just say barrier maybe.
Yeah, basically the barrier. Some clubs have 2 rows of that, and so it's like, is there too much advertising in the global game? Because you have to remember that it's still a sport. You can't. It's not just an advertising vehicle,
In terms of jerseys, I love the ads. I think that adds a whole kind of interesting aesthetic because they just add just a little bit of flair. And for instance, even just growing up in where we grew up, I forget what team that was sponsored. It was a Brazilian team, the BMG, who's
Atlético
and Cruzeiro too.
So that's all I ever. Like, I didn't even know the names of the teams at first.
Yeah.
I just knew it as BMG Bank. Like, cool. Like, that's that team. Like, BMG. Cool. So
that's a cool perspective on it, I guess.
So I because we were never really I was never exposed to ads before, like on jerseys ever, because I never really looked into it very much. But I do think the stadium ones are a little tacky, and it just kind of shows, at least in the Premier Leagues and some of these leagues, it's like, do you really need that much money?
Well, what do you think of stadiums with naming rights? So the Emirates Stadium for Arsenal.
I hate the idea of naming rights.
Yeah.
And Newcastle, they are big culprits in this. St. James Park, one of the most iconic football stadiums in the world. St. James Park is probably one of the most, okay, maybe they're not the biggest club, but St. James Park, very iconic. The owner changes it to the Sports Direct Arena, and their fans go batshit crazy.
Yeah.
And I would too.
Yeah.
If you were to tell me that you're going to change a beloved club's name, the ground's name, to Sports Direct Arena versus St. James Park. First of all, it's named after a saint. I don't know what he did, but he's a saint. Why are you taking his name off the building? That's messed up.
Must have been a big check.
Must have been a big, for sure.
Check.
But,
But that also comes into play, totally irrelevant for soccer purposes, but Denver, the Mile High, that was a sports authority.
Yeah, they called it
and
the
they're out of
Sports
business
Authority.
now. And
Really?
and I was in
true.
Denver in January, and the Sports Authority was still on the stadium,
Really?
and they were still trying to get it off.
Oh, really?
That's so interesting.
But that just goes to show how advertising could potentially screw you over.
I don't know if that's what put Sports Authority out of business. I don't want to.
No. I'm
Oh,
just
you're
saying, but if
now
it
you're
goes
the
out of
sports-
business,
You're the Sports Authority Arena, and they're out of business,
true.
and now you need to change your name again.
and then,
Unless
you know
their
what I mean?
contract's still running and
Yeah.
valid.
No
Imagine
way.
that.
Right?
Being the
Crazy.
Sports Authority stadium, but
Yeah.
Sports Authority doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's funny, but I personally I hate naming rights as well. I think that it's something so ridiculous.
Because technically the Emirates doesn't have another name, does it?
No, it's just the Emirates,
Which is
Stadium.
ridiculous because their old stadium was Highbury.
Right.
And they don't, the Emirates, so what happens when the Emirates sponsorship runs out?
Yeah,
Do they
you
rename the
switch the
stadium
name,
to the Budweiser
Well,
Stadium?
Then that's the bad part is that now you're so reliant on that money that you need to now re-up and get another sponsor, which is you can never again
You might
go
even have
back
to take
to
less
Because they don't
money.
have an original name. It'd be one thing to be like, all right, so for example, now St. James's Park, everyone knows St. James's Park. No one really says the Sports Direct Arena.
No.
And so technically the Manchester City's stadium is the City of Manchester Stadium, but it's just called the Etihad Stadium.
Yeah.
Or the Emptyhead if you prefer.
no bias on this
But
podcast.
it's interesting because, I just back to the Arsenal thing. You don't have an original name. If I'm mistaken, Arsenal fans, let me know. But the fact that I don't even know what the stadium's name is, that's a little.
No, yeah, it's just
the Emirates.
Just the Emirates.
And I think to an extent, I think it can help. So for smaller clubs, sports name naming rights, I think it's actually a decent way of getting a lot of money in. But you have to remember that most fans probably aren't going to remember it by that sponsored name unless for example the Emirates, which kids have grown up on just calling it the Emirates, so it can be a little weird. I just like how I think that every club's ground should have its own name. I don't think it should be sellable too much.
I think it should almost be a subtitle if you're going to sell whatever
St. James Park
something
at
else
the
on
direct.
it. Yeah, Sports Directory.
Directory.
But still have it be. I don't know. It's almost like you're getting rid of your club's name, as if you were
Identity.
going to sell the Crest's name.
I changed my mind because in my mind I imagine what would happen if they changed Old Trafford's name, and I almost died a little bit. So
well, that's actually a discussion that's happening now. Is that
I really hope they don't name. That's the thing, though. They put any name on Old Trafford, no one's going to call it anything other than Old Trafford. There is nothing that they'll call it other than Old Trafford.
But that could be a benefit though, because they would see more
They
money.
would still make plenty of money,
they would
and no
still
one
be
would
like,
call
hey,
it.
we're not
I
gonna
think
call it.
I disagree with you because all of the sports announcers I feel would be obligated to call
They
it
are.
by what it's actually called, and over time that would transition, and then that
The newer
transition
fans
is
Well, the
fine.
kids will continue to
Yeah.
call it whatever the new name
Yeah.
is, but
Yeah.
see, that hurts to think about, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I mean, but think about it. What's funny? In the U.S., a lot of MLS stadiums are named after sponsorship deals.
Oh yeah.
And that's also present, but that's a prevalent thing all throughout American sports.
Yeah.
Gillette Stadium for the Pats, Gillette,
Right.
very, it has never, this current iteration of Gillette Stadium has never been known as anything other than
Right.
Gillette Stadium. The old Foxborough Stadium used to be called, Foxborough Stadium,
Yeah.
but Gillette has been Gillette
Gillette.
Stadium forever.
Yeah.
And it will probably be Gillette Stadium forever.
Same thing with Fenway Park. I mean, the Boston Garden. I mean, it's now the TD Bank North Garden.
Well, no one,
But
I've never referred to the garden as the TD Garden.
no. So I guess that just goes to show if you're a loyal fan for long enough,
Yeah.
that you're just not gonna
Yeah.
even say it.
Yeah, but people that are just kind of might not know anything about it would, they get stuck into what announcers call it, and
they go from there. Yeah,
they go from there, which ruins the history. But moving on, I think a big topic that most people consider and always makes headlines, regardless of whether you're a soccer fan or not, like this type of news will usually make ESPN on a daily segment, is transfers in the world of soccer. It's a huge part of the day-to-day of a club. I mean, teams are linked, it seems, every day to a player, even if it's not transfer season. And they're usually big money deals, right? They're
now, more often than not, I feel like every new deal is just more money.
Every new deal breaks a record for a club or something. So this is an age-old debate, and it's more and more now. Do you think that there's something wrong with the transfer market currently? Do you think that a player should be worth 200 million, 220 million like Neymar was at, or do you think that's overinflated?
I think that this conversation always boils down to, we actually touched upon it a little bit last week when we talk about how European sports are very capitalist in nature, despite the fact that a lot of Europe has a lot of socialist ideals within their culture. Whereas, American sports are very socialist versus our culture being very capitalist.
Right.
I think that, in all honesty, no, I don't see a problem with rising transfers, because I should frame this in a way that I don't think these transfers should be skyrocketing for players who aren't worth it, but I don't think it's anybody. I don't think anyone should be stopping anybody from buying a really good player if they have the money in a true way. I'm not saying be sketchy with these like oil money takeovers and like backhanded deals of putting money into your club when you're not actually supposed to be doing, just to get a transfer for a player.
Right.
But I don't think it's anybody's thing of being like, oh, you can't buy a defender for more than 50 million euro, or you can't buy a striker for more than 100. I think that it's the market. Are they worth that? Do you think they're worth that? You pay it. That's capitalism. You know what I mean? People raise prices of things all the time based on what they think people will pay. And if you pay it, that's the market.
Right.
There is no standard, because the market sets itself. If Neymar goes for that much money, that's the market. But you have to keep in perspective, what are your returns? What is your return?
I think you talked about it last podcast, is Neymar was bought for that much, but he already made that money back.
Neymar currently, based on his stats for this season, is probably the best player in the world. Right now.
What I'm saying, he's already brought PSG back that money.
From both the business side, but also from the product on the field.
Right.
He is currently, if you look at stats, assists and goals, best player in the world right now.
Right. Well, the only reason I say that in terms of the financials is because people will start to argue financial fair play, which, for anyone that doesn't know what that is, it's the sports way of trying to keep teams from going under. So you have to for you to maintain your club's level, you need, I think it's either 30% or 30 million euros of profit. You need to be within that margin before you can start spending a ridiculous amount of money.
It's basically like you're only allowed to spend 30 million more than what you brought in as income. But
you need to be able to keep your club afloat, even if you're going to go buy some dude that's worth 220 million.
And so I actually love the principles of financial fair play, because I think it's a good way of keeping big clubs in check. What you're having happen is these Chinese takeovers or oil money takeovers of big clubs, such as PSG, such as Manchester City, and these they're basically becoming state-owned clubs. So, like, basically, the Qatari government owns a company that in turn owns PSG. So, in other words, PSG is owned by Qatar, which is like this crazy thing, and they're able to put money into the club that they shouldn't necessarily be able to be putting in based on normal rules. But there are very, very loose laws in place to stop people from putting money into their clubs like that. So what they're saying is you should be running your club like a business. You shouldn't just be pouring a bunch of money into it without in place to stop people from putting money into their clubs like that. So what they're saying is.
Okay, start from there. 3, 2, 1. You know what they're saying.
They're basically saying that you have to run it as its own entity. You can't just be pouring all this money into it to make these transfers and stuff in the hopes that you're going to make it back if the club isn't profitable, because that's how you run clubs into the ground. So you have quite a few examples in the English game where you've had these like big money takeovers of clubs. They basically sucked the club dry, and then all of a sudden the clubs fell 3 divisions. And it's happening to several different clubs. There's lots of reasons behind that, why a lot of clubs are being susceptible to this, where you have a lot of good examples of a good money takeover, and the clubs are still performing, doing well. For everybody hates the Glazers who own Manchester United, but Manchester United has never suffered too much necessarily in terms of the on-field product from the Glazers takeover. They still won titles. Okay, fair enough. It was mostly because of Sir Alex, but there are clubs who have been taken over by big money, and they have fallen, several levels.
Right, and it also, if that owner leaves the club, so it leaves the club susceptible to failure. So I'm thinking Chelsea, I think currently owe their owner Abramovich, who put in all this money. I think he's put in like €4 billion or British pound into the club. Where now, if he were to leave the club and require that money back, Chelsea's done for.
There's no way Chelsea's going to have that money.
Their actual revenue and the amount of money they're making isn't enough to sustain them at their current level. So deals like this, I think, should be dealt with in a way better situation. I mean, obviously FIFA's sketchiness, they do their investigating and they do whatnot. They kind of glaze over the issues like this. And they have these FFP rules that are supposed to maintain teams alive, but they don't really care as long as teams are surviving.
Right.
They don't care how the money's kind of being poured in.
It's kind of a thing where the idea is there, but the execution isn't.
Right.
Like they're not following up on any of these rules and things. And there are stories about lower league teams where players bet on themselves, because sports betting is actually allowed.
Yeah.
In the rest of the world, there are players who bet on their own team, which that's illegal. You cannot do that. There was a manager who found out his players were doing it and just failed to report it. That manager never got in trouble. That player never got in trouble, and they just continued life as it is. And so I guess what I'm trying, I know I kind of veered off the main topic here, but it's kind of the overarching thing is there's no, they're not punishing people for these outlandish things that they are doing. So I think back to the main topic of transfers, I think that if everything else were in place and doing, everyone was being correct, I think the transfer market should set itself. But because of these things that is going on, it's kind of becoming a little ridiculous.
Well, do you guys think that this the transfers, the way they're going, create a gap between the good and the lower league and bottom league teams?
I feel like the transfers are kind of creating a little bit of a gap, but it also makes scooping up a less desired player who's going to prosper at a club way more valuable. So you buy a guy like 10 million, right? And like he's good, but he's no like Liverpool, Virgil van Dijk, we just signed for what, like 75 million. So or even back to Liverpool, we got Robertson for way less money, and he's performing. Right. He is now performing just as well. And they were talking last game, if he was playing as well as he was, and he was from England, he'd be a top choice for one of the left backs for England.
Right.
And that just goes to show that there are valuable players that don't make the headlines.
Yeah.
And I think with that, the transfer market kind of creates this gap, but it's also like a bit of a gold mine.
Yeah, you can definitely find players from smaller clubs that go for cheaper.
I think that it, in a weird way, it kind of creates a gap, but at the same time, it's just like any business. You know what I mean? It because of the capitalistic nature of European soccer, I think that it just means that you have to be a more savvy businessman.
Right.
You can't. Back to the big name, big money signings who break the record, right? Paul Pogba, Neymar, Cristiano Ronaldo, Gareth Bale. those players, they made all their money back in jersey sales, basically. You know, especially Neymar. Pogba Pogba got announced. They made so much money off of his jersey sales, right? Now, you know, what I find an issue in transfers is when people are spending ridiculous amounts of money on players that aren't going to make them that money back in that similar way, you know? But then again, it becomes a question of...
but then are you buying players for profitability, or are you buying them for the sport?
That's a good point. I don't know, because it's that hard thing where the Neymar transfer, everyone was going insane about. They were literally losing their shit because he went for that much money and he makes 600,000 euros a week. But he was able to make that money back with jersey sales and with his contribution on the field. So it's hard for him. The two things are tied, and I think that's why he's so valuable. So it's like, that's a good point. Are you buying the player for the marketing, or are you buying the player for the sport?
Right.
Which I think is that big divide. That's kind of the main theme of today's episode. It's like, are you about the sport, or are you about the business?
Right.
You know?
And I think that's where the issue with a lot of people have with transfers is that sometimes it seems like teams just buy players because they know they'll get the return, even though the players don't fit in their team necessarily. So I'm thinking United has been susceptible to this over the last couple of years of just buying big names.
Angel Di Maria,
Falcao, players that are going to cause a stir, but if you have 6 strikers, why the hell do you need to buy another one, right? So you become too involved in the financials of it, and you overlook the product on the field. And then where all the thing goes, oh, but your team is spending $1 billion a year. Why aren't you guys winning more trophies? Right? So it's not necessarily that money spent equals the trophies, and that's where the fan gets angry, because the fan's money is going into the club. The club is saying that they're investing this money, but they're not investing the money in a way that's actually producing anything in return for the fan. Because what the fan cares about at the end of the day is winning trophies, right? Happiness is seeing their team prosper. If I'm buying a $120 jersey, my team hasn't won shit in 20 years. Why the hell am I paying? Why am I buying that jersey? Why am I paying the ridiculous ticket prices? What's the end goal, right? Other than the owners,
the club.
Than my club, but other than the owners making their profit, right? So that's where the division comes between the financials and the fans, and often fans aren't seeing anything for the end of it. I mean, Manchester City over the last 10 years spent over $1 billion British pounds. Liverpool, in 25 years now, since they haven't really won, and they haven't really been that. But United's been a victim of this too. I mean, United spending the billions and not really winning anything since Fergie left. I mean, the amount of money United spend is ridiculous, regardless of. I mean, if you're looking at invested in what you get in return in that time span, I'm not necessarily happy with it, right? So that's where I get frustrated, is because you see the amount of money these teams are making, but if they're not bringing anything back, I'm pretty pissed.
Exactly, because with the fair play law, like, yeah, they're bidding this much money on these players, but wait, we've made this much money to be able to spend that much money, but we're not producing anything.
So
it's just...
This is an interesting point. I have no problem with Manchester United spending $1 billion on a player. Reason why is because they actually make their money from the sport. Manchester United is the biggest club in terms of bringing in money from the actual sport. They're self-sustained. They've been a self-sustained club. They make money from footballing reasons every single year. City and PSG, that is... I don't want to be controversial, but their money does not come from sporting things. They're getting money from the Qatari government. They're getting money from the state-owned, enterprises that it's sketchy as hell. And so to me, if Manchester United tomorrow were to buy Neymar for, so he went for 200 and something million. Let's say he went for 750 million British pounds, and they were paying him £1 million a week, I wouldn't bat an eye. I would say perfect. If Manchester United can pay it, they can pay it. Mm-hmm. But, I think that financial fair play has to apply in that sense. If you're making money from your footballing reasons and you're footballing investments
and from good operations,
from good operations of just being a good, well-run business. I think that's also it has to be thought of as a business, right? If you're a business that is just being a plaything for a rich guy who's just pouring all of his money, what happens when he gets bored? Right. And it's like businesses are their own entities. Right. They have to be producing their own money and spending their own money, and you can't rely on outside investment.
Right. And I actually was reading an article about PSG's ownership and how kind of sketchy it is, but they really just bought PSG because they have such a poor image in the world. The owners, they buy PSG to say, hey, okay, let's lighten up our image. They buy this club, say whatever, say their image gets fixed in the next 15 years. They drop PSG. PSG can't actually afford to do what they're doing. What happens to them then? Right? They're already not in that great of a league. That's maybe in 15 years it grows. Neymar brings the attention there. But if the league doesn't have that much attraction, no one's really watching PSG anymore. But they just go under.
Which I think is a very interesting point about the Neymar transfer that no one's talking about is the fact that he was only able to be brought to PSG because of Qatari oil money.
Right.
And so, like you said, it's basically they're buying this club for diplomatic reasons, where they want to be seen better in the world ahead of not only the World Cup, but ahead of they sorely need it because their image is god-awful in the world. We spoke about it a couple episodes back about the World Cup and the injustices that they're putting on the people there working on the World Cup. So for them, they're basically by association with PSG, they are trying to be seen in the world a lot better than they really are. Right. It's a very weird reason to own a football club.
Right. I mean,
yeah, no, it is an extremely odd reason, and just to think that a majority of the people who support PSG or don't even know about what's going on, goes right, the pull the wool right over their eyes.
Right. I think
it's like, PSG bought Neymar.
PSG,
cool.
I mean, PSG and City are kind of in the same boat, and it's almost a topic in its own, so I don't want to delve too much into it. But there are these clubs that, I mean, City, look at the amount of money they spend. It's like 1.26 billion British pounds that they've put into the club in the last 10 years to win 2 Premier Leagues. Right? If I'm a fan of City, I'm not that happy.
Are you okay.
2.
Yeah.
2. Right? In the last 10 years.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to win this year.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough.
I hope that I'm wrong, and that's just, but they already won this year, right? So for that investment, the return on the investment is horrendous.
Right. Which is interesting
because they don't fill out their stadium. They don't have a world attraction. They're fractions compared to other clubs in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Right? They don't even have a fan base comparable to Arsenal or Chelsea worldwide.
So here's the funny part. I think that right now they have none of this. But if they keep KDB happy, if they keep Kevin De Bruyne happy, and he continues to blossom, they will create a lot of fans in the next 10 to 15 years.
Right.
If they keep up this level. But the problem is, how do you keep sustaining this level of buying these high-priced players? You bought Bernardo Silva for £50 million or €50 million, and you don't play him. The guy's on your bench.
Look at the amount of money they spent this season on left backs, on right backs.
They have too many fullbacks.
It's what some clubs spend in total for a whole year, for a whole team worth of transfers.
They have way too their back line is insanely expensive, and they just got Aymeric Laporte. So it's like, I don't know, but that's the other thing is sure, it looks ridiculous right now. But it pains me to say it, but I think that Man City, if they sustain this insane level of spend, which they clearly seem to be doing, I think they can do well. They got, Sergio Aguero, absolute baller. Not a global superstar, based on his marketing image and things like that. Superstar. Kevin De Bruyne, if he wins a Ballon d'Or, potentially in the next couple of years, and Man City gets put on the map, I think they'll have fans for life.
But what's your view on that?
Regardless of the money?
Well, regardless of who they get in, right? If you've only won 2 major trophies in the last 10 years, is it really a matter of football, or is it for the attraction of growing your club? Right? Because they've been successful. They've been successful in the terms of they just have had good teams over I'd say maybe 6 to 8 years, because they haven't. But they haven't really won anything.
Yeah.
Pep Guardiola last year, how much money did he spend? He didn't win anything.
Yeah. I mean, in comparison to Jose Mourinho, we spent a lot of money, but We won some titles.
I mean, we won the things we won the titles that we had to win, right? And I mean, it's nothing to boast of, but whatever.
But it brought Civil War back. You know what I mean?
But he didn't win anything for that trophy.
Yeah.
So as a fan, I think as a fan of other clubs, you hate it because like these guys are just spending money to ruin it. But like if you were a City fan, would you be happy with the amount that you've spent over the last 10 years and what you got in return? I don't think you'd care.
Yeah, I don't think you'd care.
I don't think you care. Personally, I think that if you watch Kevin De Bruyne day in and day out, and you go, "Fuck it, awesome."
Really?
Yeah.
But you'd also have to.
Okay, B. So I'm gonna ask you this because Liverpool spent a lot of money. Are you happy with what Liverpool has achieved in the last 25 years and the amount of money they spent? The amount of money they spent on Andy Carroll as a striker. You know what I mean? I'm trying to get perspective because you can play beautiful soccer, but if your team isn't winning,
True.
So your point is very valid. But at the end of the day, it's that good business decision thing. Did you make a good transfer for making a good transfer, or are you just taking as many swings of the bat as possible and hoping one of them is Kevin De Bruyne?
Right, but you can have Kevin De Bruyne, but if you're not winning anything, what's the point of having Kevin De Bruyne?
True. I will say
Kevin
that.
De Bruyne last year. You know what I mean? Like, what I'm trying to say is if you're spending the money to buy players and you can be consistent, but then you're not winning your quarterfinal game, you're not winning your final game to actually win you something or get you what you are spending the money for, does it matter?
No, then you're just growing your club and you're just making more money yourself.
But that's the thing is that, Man City aren't just focusing on I think that for them, their strategy is more global. It's in terms of, they now own New York City FC. They also own Melbourne City FC, and they're trying to bring it under this big umbrella of like a football conglomerate.
And they've spent a lot on youth development.
They have spent a lot of money on youth development.
Their youth facilities are ridiculous.
And they're trying to truly be a global brand. Now,
brand.
Yeah.
Keyword.
I think that's what we need to really kind of come into the light. It's no longer about football. It's about the brand image.
Right, and that's the thing. But what they have to see is that unless they win titles, the brand means shit.
Right. That's the over. Does that kill? So does the desire to make a financial impact or a financial gain kill the actual sport?
I don't think so. My stance is that we can be romantic about football and say that it should be this pure thing, but if you do any real deep dive research into the history of football, it's been as corrupt from day one as it is today.
Yeah.
And so for me, this isn't very shocking. I don't think that PSG and Man City owning these teams. Sure, it's unprecedented that a country can own a club because clubs are supposed to be a localized thing. Like technically, if you have a club from Manchester, it's a Manchester club. It's owned by an owner, but it's also for the people. It's for Manchester. It's for that. But now what these state-owned enterprises have done, especially like Zenit St. Petersburg, it's actually owned by a Russian-owned entity as well. So they're not like it's not Qatar isn't the only people. They aren't the only people doing it.
Yeah.
Zenit St. Petersburg, for people that don't know, are the 7th most profitable club in the world, even though you probably haven't heard of them.
And the reason that is because Gazprom, which is owned by Russia, the Russian government, puts a shenanigans load of money into that club. In weird ways that are only traceable. On paper, they're not connected.
They're traceable if you're the FBI.
Yeah, but
a regular person wouldn't have any
see
idea.
it. But I think that for me, it's not ruining football. I think that, you have these small blips of some people spending way too much money, but it always comes down to business. I don't think you can necessarily regulate it too much.
Yeah.
There has to be regulations in place. So in other words, I think they should revamp financial fair play. But to me, I don't think it's ruining football because this has been the case from day one.
Yeah.
You've had sketchy business happening since the first early days of football. It's just bad that now football is such a global phenomenon that everybody's money is being put into football.
Yeah.
It's not before, it's always been like the world's most popular sport, but I think sport as a whole, because of globalization, has become even that much more popular. So that's why all this money is coming in. And so when this much money is coming into the sport on a global level, things are gonna get sketchy. They have to control it, of course. But my maybe naive view on this is that the love of football will prevail. And sure, if you're gonna become a City fan because of this recent stretch, yeah, that's going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, you have clubs who don't have that many fans, like, historically, but they get these big money takeovers, and all of a sudden, like, you have all these brand new fans.
So I don't want to interrupt you, but I have another. So we like to talk about this whole time, all three of us, we've been talking more about the top tier league in the world. What about the teams in Brazil that owners, people in charge, are funneling money out of, where money is the biggest thing there, and the fans are not being put into consideration? Is money ruining the sport there?
No, bad business is ruining the sport there. I think
and no regulations again.
And then again, it also comes back to the regulation thing.
Okay.
I think that because it always has to be regulated. If it's not regulated, people are going to take advantage. And that's in anything in life,
Right.
you know?
Oh,
to me, I think that, sure, the money plays a part, but a lot of times it seems like these articles that come out...
It's being able to control.
Yeah.
It's being able to control, and I agree with that.
I think that it comes down to being a scapegoat. People are using the money, and they're seeing these big-ass values and being like, whoa.
Money is the root of all evil. Is what
versus if they realize that it's just bad management and bad spending of money, that's the ruining of football.
I agree.
No, I was just going to say, money is the root of all evil, dude.
Yeah. But I think that's often it's how people use the money that's the root of all evil.
So my question to you is, do you think money is ruining football?
No, I don't personally think so. I believe that in order to, like, we personally want to see football to become more popular over here, and the only way to make something more popular is to push more money into it.
Right.
Yeah, I think it stinks that we have these expensive transfers now, and clubs can only really get like one nice guy to add to their arsenal, but it almost makes it a little bit more fun being like, oh, this guy's worth that much money, like I can't wait to see how he does, and it puts a lot of pressure on him, but it also could lead us to a good player. So
I think that also when we think of these things, we think of them in terms of our perspective, and like 89 million euro is a lot of money for me, but it's not for
a club.
No. So I think that also our perspectives skew what we think of transfers, but for a club that's...
And you mean we as fans?
As fans. That skews the perspective, but these clubs that are making, billions, they don't really... that's a fraction of what they're...
And like we said, when you buy a player, usually that's not the end of it. Usually you make your money in a way, shape, or form through advertising and things like that. I just think that the whole topic of today has been basically the fine line between business and football, and I just think that the line needs to be respected. Yeah. So, I think that my overarching sentiment on this is respect the fact that the two have to go hand in hand, because football without business doesn't work, and the business without the actual football on the pitch isn't going to work.
Right.
So respect the line, make sure the regulations get put in place, but respect the fact that they have to work together, or else it's not going to work.
Precisely.
No, I think that's right, and I think that's a good place for us to end it off today. So that's it, everyone. Thank you for listening into this episode. We hope you enjoy. If you did, please leave us that 5-star review. This episode was really cool. I think everyone has an opinion on money in football, and some people will say that it is ruining the sport, and some people like us think it's just a part of the growth of it. Let us know what you think. As always, our contact is in the show notes. Let us know if you actually think that this is an issue in the sport or not. And yeah, be sure to share this with a friend. And as a shameless little plug, don't forget to check out trebleware.com. It's our actual soccer-inspired brand. It's something that we really enjoy working on, and we hope that you guys will enjoy it as well. So that's it for this week. Be sure to check us out for next week's episode.